I think we all remember what happened in 2008. If you worked in construction, trades, engineering, and architecture, that fall, the whole bottom fell out of it. And I had just moved to a new place in Colorado. And in 1 week, I lost my part-time job, lost my full-time job. I broke up with my boyfriend. July essentially allows landlords to actually search for renters. And renters get a personal profile. Think about it kind of like a LinkedIn profile. We want to make buying really easy, whether you're a real estate investor or a first-time buyer or a repeat buyer or a senior. We want to make that decision, not the hassle that it is today.
Hello and welcome back to the Masters of Real Estate. Today we are going to learn from Heather Rankow. Heather, how's it going?
It's going. Happy day to you. It's actually the afternoon here in California. So,
It's a perfect sunny day in California where you are,
mhm.
where we're from, Northern California. It's terrible. Don't move here, please.
Yeah.
So, Heather, I'm sure listeners are eager to learn about you as a master of real estate. So, how do you introduce yourself these days?
Yeah, so my name's Heather. I am a co-founder of Rely, and I'm also a mom. I have two kids, Jack, who is 7, and my daughter Lola is 6. And I'm also a wife to my husband Alex. And obviously, work. I've done a lot in real estate over my years of 20 years. And I just recently graduated from Berkeley School of Business at UC Berkeley in California with my executive MBA this past June. So I'm kind of been enjoying the summer, and then kind of passions outside of professional stuff. I love to ski with my kids. I was a competitive US ski team freestyle for a while, and I just love being anything outdoors and kind of being active.
Wow, you were a competitive skier, you are a startup
Hmm.
founder, you're a mom of two kids, your wife, you also essentially finished studying as well in parallel. Seems like you have a lot of free time these days.
Yeah, now that my MBA is over, I definitely have more time. I actually did it concurrently while we started our startup, and it's a lot of work, a lot of time away from my family. So I've kind of been taking the summer to really spend time with my kids, enjoy some time with them, just be home, not be traveling, and not be running down to Berkeley, every couple of weeks. So it's really been a great time, but we're excited about the months to come because there's lots happening.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I want to
Yeah,
learn more as well. So
yeah.
before that, like listeners want to understand what kind of a person you are. So what do you think is the best, spirit animal or bird that best describes you?
Yeah, I would say a golden retriever. I do have blonde hair. I don't know if but I have blonde hair, and I tend to always lead with like a smile and happiness and humor. And I'm super energetic and love being around people and conversating. And that's kind of very much the MO of a golden retriever. They also love to run around and be outside. So that's very much me. Yeah.
So is that the main operating principle in your life? Like stay happy and keep moving forward?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things is I always lead with humor. I think life sometimes can be really heavy. And I think I try to give, not only myself, but people a little bit of compassion and grace, but also be lighthearted and have a lot of humor sometimes, which makes everybody laugh.
I love it. So Heather, if you had to summarize your entire professional trajectory so far in a single metric, what would you say that is?
I'd say, not a financial metric, but the diversity of my experience actually is pretty priceless. I was really lucky to have a competitive and first career experience as a teenager as a competitive freestyle skier. And moving on to that, I really learned the value of, compassion, hardworking, competitiveness. And over the past 20 years, I've worked through that through the built world professionally and have helped throughout housing developments and real estate of probably over a value of 500 million.
You've been a competitive freestyle skier and have influenced
Mhm.
over $500 million of real estate development. That's quite a lot. So when you look back, and we go all the way back to zero, when you were just starting, what's been your broad trajectory so far? Like, how did all these sequence of events come into place?
Yeah, I come from I was raised from a single mom, and I had a brother, and she, I never valued the word entrepreneur, really knew. I always thought it was more for like big tech companies, but she actually started her own cleaning business where we lived, and looking back on it now, I'm really proud of her that she did that on her own and really saw her, come from nothing to, being able to buy her first home for us by herself. And then also build her own small comp business along the side of that. And I think she's really modeled that for me. And I didn't probably know it when I was doing it, but when you get older and you have your own kids, you look back on it and you're like, that was actually really important for me to see. And she's always told me, the world's your oyster. If there's anything you can dream up, like you can do it. And I think that's really been a running thread for me professionally is, if I'm down and out and broke, there's always the future to behold. And you just got to put the vision ahead and put the intention down to get there.
Heather, have you ever been broke in your life?
Oh, yes. So, yeah. So, as I said, so I came from a single mom. She did have a small business, but she didn't always make a ton of money. And so, when I went off to college, I was 100% on my own. So, you think, rent and your cell phone bill, your car bill, insurance. So, I had to work, about part time to full time while I was in college, pay for college 100%. And when all those bills hit, sometimes, I remember going to the store and be like, hey, what's the most nutritious thing I can get for the least amount of money? And knowing I only have like $35. And that's literally all I have in my bank account. Luckily, I could walk to school. But I think it really shows you, how to budget really well and value what you have. Worth is not always monetary worth. I was really happy in those days, even though I didn't have a ton of money. I had a lot of great friends, was really engaged at school and learning when I was so lucky to be at my school. And so I think when you look at it that way, I was like, the future will come. It'll be better next month, and always having a positive outlook on it. I think your perception on that really drives how you move forward. And I was really lucky to be able to have that kind of positive drive to be able to succeed in the future.
So for someone listening to this right now who can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, or they see it but it's not as bright, how would you
Hmm.
help them? Like, what do you think they should know about and learn from your positive drive?
Yeah, I think one is knowing the resources that are available to you and just researching that. That's something you can do to be an advocate for yourself. Second, your community. So sometimes your community is your family, sometimes it's not. Sometimes that can be your school, it could be friends, whatever that circle is, know that, people, you are loved and people do care about you. And just being open and honest with what's going on actually can be really helpful. And then third, make a plan. Even if you're like doubtful that it might not happen, putting it down on paper or writing it or telling someone actually helps you to be accountable and being able to push that forward.
So know that you have resources available, get help from a community and help them in exchange, and then make a plan, whatever it is, just execute.
Yeah, exactly.
So as you look back in your life, what inflection points led you to learn pick up skiing and then become one of the best skiers in the world?
Yeah, I think actually the biggest times that I've learned the most have been in times of adversity when things are not going well. So I'd been on the US ski team for a while, but didn't have a lot of money, and a lot of athletes usually do. And I was lucky to have been supported by community and different nonprofits. But when I went to college, they kind of changed how they did financial things with the US ski team. And I found myself in a position where I had to put like $20,000 down to be able to travel. And I was like, and I'm in college, and I was like, there is just no way that that's happening. And so I had to really make a hard decision to either quit school and focus on skiing or quit skiing and focus on school. There wasn't really that being able to have both. And this is back in like the early 2000s. We didn't really have a lot of online schooling. And so I made the tough decision to do school. And it was actually really great. And I loved it. And I found ways to do ski research in school and engineering, and I'm really proud of all that work that I did. So that tough decision kind of led me into that point of, really a love for school and research and understanding problems better. And then through that, I just kind of proceeded professionally and just wanted to like go experience things, travel, go to different places, live in different places. So I moved to California and worked for the county of LA, which was really great. And I had a boyfriend in college, and we traveled out there together, and we liked it, but I really missed the mountains. And so we decided to move to Colorado. And this is in like 2007, 2008, which I think we all remember what happened in 2008. If you worked in construction, trades, engineering, and architecture, that fall, like the whole bottom fell out of it. And I had just moved to a new place in Colorado. And in 1 week, I like lost my part-time job, lost my full-time job. I broke up with my boyfriend. You name it, it all happened. But I had applied to grad school and was like, well, I wonder if I can get in early. And, just me inquiring and trying to get a research assistant position, I was able to get in early. And so even when you're down and out and things like seem like nothing worse can happen, if you really focus on what you want and really take the steps forward to get there and don't give up, you will get there at some point. It might not be on your exact timeline. It might not happen the exact way you want it to, but having the positive mindset that it will, I think really makes a big difference. And even when times when like you're down and out, that's really when you need it the most. And relying on those around you, like your best friends, your family, whoever that might be.
That's incredible. What advice did you absorb from other mentors and parental figures in your life as you were working through adversity?
Yeah, I would say you only quit when you give up. And so, giving up can have many different ways. And, just because you're faced with a problem, it just doesn't mean to be like, oh, it's the end. It really gives you the opportunity to reframe it, look at it a different way, look at it from a different perspective. And, you might be staring at a huge boulder and you think the only way is to like just ram your way through it. Whereas if you just take the time to like sit and problem solve, like you're like, oh, there's actually a way over there. I just have to go a little longer and I'll make myself around it and I'll be better on the other side. But I think sometimes we're just blinded by that. So really talking with others and your mentors, advisors, your support team, if you have business partners, even talking with them on the personal side can actually, help you open up and try to figure out, be a better problem solver for whatever you're trying to conquer, whether it be personally or professionally.
That's incredible. So never give up, keep going forward.
Mm.
As you were working through all these changes in your life, how did you end up deciding that you wanted to pursue a career in real estate or project management in real estate?
Gosh, I always remember just as a kid. Oh, so I lived in upstate New York in the Adirondacks. So it's a small town. There's only like 3,500 people, very tourist based. We don't have any skyscrapers. I think the tallest building was probably like 4 stories high and it was like the city hall, right? And so when we would go down to New York City, I just always remember being as a kid really so interested about like bridges and how the buildings looked and how things moved and highways and all of that. And I even remember in third grade, they asked you, like, you have to go research careers and stuff. And I had picked, being an architect as one of something that I'd love to do. And when I went to school, I went to a small engineering school and you kind of get to dabble in all different types of engineering. And I got exposed to civil engineering and I was like, oh, that's my jam. And civil engineering has so much breadth across it from project management and surveying, real estate, architecture, engineering, wastewater, transportation, you name it. There's so much you can do within it. And I really like that because I thought, well, that's a lot. That's a lot to be able to do under one degree and learn a lot. And so that's kind of how I took that on. And then after 2008, I just turned 40 this year. And in that time, like you had to be like super diverse. I think in about like 6 months, I applied for 150 jobs within like a 2 hour radius, right? And so anything that you could get, you literally took it. And so I actually took a job working for an architect and took a job working for a general contractor, even though they were part-time. And the value that came out of those is they actually just learned a whole new skill set on like in the built world. And when I look back on it, it's 2008 and me losing my job and going to grad school and having difficulty finding a job is actually, the best thing that could have happened to me because here I sit today, I have, a diversity in terms of experience and skill set across general contractors, engineers, architects, working behind a public counter that not a lot of people that are 40 typically get that experience. And so when I look back on it, you might in the moment think it's really bad, but then looking back, it's like, actually, that's, the shining light of amazingness that I've been able to experience professionally.
That's amazing. And I'd love to switch over and focus more on what you love
Yeah.
these days. So, what feeling do you love these days, Heather?
I think the feeling that I love the most is grace. I'm learning to have grace for myself and calmness in action. So I think sometimes we're very quick to move, whether it be through judging, whether it be through answering, whether it be through like, oh, I just do this. And just pausing sometimes and thinking positively about someone's reaction, that instead of thinking, oh, they meant to do this to me or being defensive, having a little bit compassion to try to understand them a little bit better and give them a little bit of grace with whatever they're dealing with. You don't know if it's something personal, professional, emotionally. You don't know the underpinnings of a lot of things. And whether it be your family, your friends, or just somebody on the road or you're opening the door for or at the supermarket, having a little grace for them, I think there's a lot of beauty in that. And I think if we could all do that, the world would probably be a little easier to work in.
And it seems like your work at Rely is making the world a little easier to live in as well. And
Yeah.
kind of empathy that you're talking about, you're also showing towards your customers. So, for somebody who hasn't heard of Rely before, what pain points do you solve for your customers these days?
Yeah, so I didn't divulge this earlier, but I am a small landlord myself. So we have a property in Reno and a rental here in Truckee. And we're small landlords, we self-manage. So that means we don't pay a property manager. We find our tenants ourselves, we answer all the calls, and all that comes along with it. And sometimes, whether you're a renter, when you're looking for a rental, it is just a daunting process. Typically, you got like 10 tabs open, all the different websites. You're trying to be the first one in at an open house, and it's extremely competitive. And it's just hard sometimes for you to showcase yourself amongst others. And so, on the flip side, for landlords, it's like, how do you sort through those 30 applications and find the best, tenant for you? Because every small landlord's a little different. Some qualify, mostly just on a feel, like, can I trust you? Like, how do I know I can trust you? Do you know someone that I know? Or who do you know? What does your previous landlord say? And what's the feeling about the person they are? I mean, they sometimes underlook income and credit score, but the tools that we have there today at the disposal for both landlords and rentals don't really allow either party to kind of solve those problems. So that's why we created Rely. And Rely essentially allows landlords to actually search for renters. And renters get a personal profile. Think about it kind of like a LinkedIn profile, but we lead with qualitative information first. So it's like, hey, I like to garden, I'm a great cook, I love lazy weekends, I love plants, all those things that are the softness parts about you. That's how we lead with renters and landlords. And then we lead with the qualitative stuff, which is like your background check, income, financials, and your references. And all of that's verified with ID, with Clear ID. And then we give renters the opportunity to actually share that profile and control how much visibility they see on it for people they share it with unlimitedly at no cost. And that just acts as their application. And small landlords are usually really agnostic to where they get that information from. They just want the data. And that's really what we're going to market with right now.
That's incredible. And what's your primary source of revenue at Rely? Is it the landlords who pay a fee, or
Yes, yeah. We're doing a SaaS freemium model. So for 2024, as we launch here in the next month, everything's going to be free. We're also looking for some key design partners to take on in 2025 as we build out the product map further. But then we do plan to offer additional features as we build out the product over time and give additional opportunities for renters. So we'll probably monetize them too. And then also organizations like small businesses, nonprofits, housing organizations, and such.
it makes a lot of sense. So, what is your ultimate vision as you think about 2025 and beyond?
Oh gosh. So I think it's actually really important, having an exit plan or ultimate growth plan. I took a great class with Professor Shakar at Berkeley about game theory. And it's actually really important to understand where you want to land and then be able to work your way back so you kind of know the moves, but you also need to understand the landscape. And so when my co-founder Ashley and I started this, everybody's real estate journey really starts at renting. And building out that data case for yourself throughout that lifetime is something that we really believe in. And right now, if you move through anything that touches real estate, you got to sign up with a different username, different password. You got to upload all the same stuff. If you're going through banking or insurance, like it's just a drag. And a lot of that is because it's all really fragmented. It's all really traditional and not digital in nature. But as we're seeing over the past year, and even with the National Association of Realtors lawsuit, that things are changing in how we operate in real estate. And we believe that the user data and how they operate in real estate is really valuable. And automating that and making that simpler for everything that it touches is something that we plan to do in the future. So we're starting with renting, but we're going to capture the whole real estate value chain over time.
So can you explain that vision more? Like, what
Yeah.
problems do you want to solve in real estate that haven't been solved properly yet? Like,
Yeah.
assuming you have access to all the right real estate
Yep.
data and you're getting customers at the beginning of their real estate journey.
Yep. Yeah, we want to build that relationship with them, right? So there's a great company called UpSwat that came out of Berkeley, and they essentially have like one profile for small businesses, and then banks can go in and vet that because all the information's there. They don't have to ask for it, like typically lending. And so we see a vision like that moving forward for like first time home buyers, which is really difficult to navigate the mortgage title process of getting a property, is that we build out that case, we have all those documents in one place, and then as you move forward, it's all underwriters, we work through partnerships on, and it's just a click of a button and all that data is already there. And you don't have to spend, I don't know if you guys processed a home recently or done the underwriting on it with banks. It is, even if you're like a seasoned real estate investor, unless you have somebody like an accountant doing it for you, it is a drag to do yourself. Like I think when we did our first home, and I'm a veteran, a Navy veteran, so we went through the VA loan, there must have been like 400 pages of documents or something, right? And they lost it. So, I mean, and that's just my personal experience, but I know a lot of other people from our customer interviews have that similar experience. And we really want to change that. We want to make buying really easy. And whether you're a real estate investor or a first time buyer or a repeat buyer or a senior, we want to make that decision, not the hassle that it is today.
And Heather, as you think about all of these things and,
Hmm.
your personal experiences as a veteran, as a member of the US freestyle skiing team, as somebody who's lived in a lot of parts of the country, what do you think separates you from the 99% of the market?
Yeah, I mean, for Rely, we're trying to remove the friction out of the system. And I think if you look at a lot of the other players, they build in friction where they try to create their moat, or their security or their defense kind of around that. And we're trying to do actually part of the opposite of it is remove the friction, open the funnel. And I think if you open the funnel for landlords, typically they have to wait for people to apply for properties or word of mouth. And they're, which is typically why the average day is like 45. But if you open the funnel for them and say, hey, there's 1,500 people in your market who are actually looking, here's who they are, and here's what they're looking for, and here's how they qualify. That really just opens the funnel for them. That means less rental costs. They don't have to spend as much time, less risk. And on the flip side for renters, it's the same thing. They don't have to spend like 40 hours in a month trying to find a property. They can actually just advertise themselves and somebody can find them. So I think initially it's really removing out of the friction out of the system and making, real estate and renting just not a bog, more something like, oh, I can't wait to list myself, or a landlord being excited to be like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see all the great renters that are on the market, right? And I think that's the real differentiator for us is trying to open up the funnel.
That's incredible. And creating that frictionless experience is really at the heart of
Yeah.
everything. So, what is the story behind naming your company Rely?
Oh, this is actually great. So I got accepted into Berkeley. I think it was like April of 2022. And Berkeley, like the MBA program, they do a lot of intro events where girls can come and meet. So we did a women's brunch for all the different MBA programs. And so I showed up and, you're just meeting people. And the first person I sit down next to is Ashley Keys, my co-founder. And it was one of those things where you just meet people and you're like, oh, they got my energy. Like we were just started laughing about so much stuff and it was so much fun. And then I found out she was actually going to be in our cohort for the executive MBA. I'm like, oh, it's great. Well, I guess I'll see you at orientation. And we just kicked it off and just meshed really well as friends. And then we went to our first course, which is an immersion, and we did it at the Shamanada in Santa Cruz. And so I think it's like night 2 and everybody's doing different things for dinner. I'm like, let's order in and just sit down and have a bottle of wine. And the Chaminad's a beautiful resort. So we like sit in front of this fireplace, having wine and a bottle of wine later, we're just talking about like, hey, this is what I do as a landlord. This is my story. She was actually a competitive Division 1 track athlete, Hall of Famer at her high school for track. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was a competitive athlete. And like, oh my God, you were raised by a single mom, me too. And so we found out we had a lot of background similarity. And then we both are real estate investors and we're both going the same MBA program. We're like, wow, there's a lot of synergy. And we just started talking about our problems as landlords and then just started saying like, well, maybe we could fix this. Like, how do we even do that? I didn't really know anything about startups or entrepreneurship really. And so I was like, well, we're at Berkeley. There's got to be resources for this, right? And so we just kind of took that forward and we're like, well, let's meet next month and kind of like talk and what that looks like. And so we actually just started putting pen to paper and started fooling around with like, what could it be called? And what would we be doing? And RELY actually stands for real estate logistics for you. And we spent a lot of time to get to that point, but really found out it's a logistical problem typically for most people in real estate trying to get into it. And most of the friction is caused around logistics. And that's something we want to solve. That's something we want to solve. And so we said real estate logistics for you, because it's very personalized and so is your data. And so we thought it was actually going to be the perfect name. And so that's kind of how we landed on RELY.
I love the name, real estate logistics.
Yeah.
What else should listeners know about Rely that we haven't discussed already?
Yeah, I think, for Ashley and I think the core of why we're still in it is her and I are a lot of the blood behind it. We're, friends first, co-founders. We put, 8+ months into customer discovery before we'd even do a prototype. So we really believe in listening to our customers and understanding their problems and creating solutions that solve them. And I think this is at the core of who we are. And the core of our charter is really solving, housing problems and making the world a better place. So not only are our minds in the right place, but so are our hearts. And we really see a world where, housing is accessible for all in different ways. And we really want to be a part of that journey and want to have our customers see that journey through.
That's incredible. So, for a landlord who wants insights on their local housing market or wants to use your application to start testing it out, or for somebody who wants to invest in Rely, how should they reach out to you and Ashley?
Yeah, so our website is called Rely Estate. So instead of real estate, RelyEstate.com. You could head over there. We're launching here in the next month, so you can sign up to be one of our first users. You could also follow us on LinkedIn. Some of our first 100 users are going to get a special little gift, so definitely be one of the first ones to reach out. So on LinkedIn, you can follow us at Rely Estate. And then for me, I'm just Heather_Rankow. You can just search for me. You'll find me on there. And you can reach out to me. I respond to a lot of my messages. You can email me. So email is going to be heather@relyestate.com. We're getting that set up here in the next couple days. I like to be pretty open for people and, or if you want connections or want to know things about real estate, I've got a lot of experience in it and happy to kind of help connect. One of my favorite things is connecting people and collaboration and meeting new people too. So we're going to head over to, we'll also be at Blueprint in Vegas next month, which is a big real estate conference here in the US. So look for us there. And then we're always around Berkeley too. So happy to see everybody on campus.
Love that, Heather. Now let's talk about your real estate investment thesis. Well, I'm not sure
Yeah.
a lot of our listeners are also real estate investors. So you mentioned you have some exposure to real estate in Reno and Truckee. Can you describe your real estate portfolio? Right?
Yeah. We bought our first house in Truckee in 2013 when you could actually most people could afford to buy. And then my husband and I, he's a general contractor, and we just started renovating it. It was a 1970s kind of modified A-frame ski chalet. And we just slowly started doing everything over the past 7 years and made it a beautiful house. And then whenever the interest rates were so low, we actually refinanced, did a cash out. And that's how we got the money to buy our investment property down in Reno. And then we took that, renovated it a little bit, got it up to snuff, and then got our first renters in there. But you think everything would be great, oh, this can be passive. And actually, we had a major water leak about 6 weeks in that we had to gut the whole place after we spent 6 months renovating it. So kind of a landlord's worst nightmare, to have mold and all that. And then this is when State Farm moved out of California, in which Northern Nevada was wrapped in. So it was a bit of a nightmare. But we finally got a new tenant in about 18 months later. And it's been really great. But I think that the key for that was, it was something my husband and I always knew we wanted to do. But we're like, well, we need to increase the value on our house. So we need to put in a lot of sweat equity here to get the value up to be able to take the cash out. And it took us about 8 years to do that, and a lot of late nights. So I think you got to get your hands dirty sometimes, unless you have access to capital and you got rich parents, then that's usually a quick ask. But otherwise, it's, buying a duplex, renovating one side, rent the other side out, kind of be creative about it, I think. And then once you have, I always hear, we're not there yet, but once you have that first good flip, then you have the access to the capital. And then it gets easier kind of every step forward.
Yeah, I completely agree. That I mentioned a lot of things which a lot of us agree with. One is there's no passive income in real estate.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, the passive income is huge, and it our passive income pays for the property on those typically, plus the fees, and we have a slim margin afterwards, but we usually just reinvest it back into the property. And the idea, I guess, how we really thought about it, because we have two kids, is that I can't even imagine what the cost of a house, the first time house, is going to be for someone when they're in their 30s or late 20s. And so we always said, well, at least we'll buy enough rentals that like we can always gift them to our kids, and so they won't ever have to be burdened with trying to find their first home. It may not be in the place they want to be, but they'll at least have access to that. And so instead of doing an education fund, we just did a real estate purchase for each one of them.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Which I've got the learning summer 2 and 3 in real estate, which is, it's all about getting free checks in the mail is a myth. Like you have to keep reinvesting in real estate because depreciation
Yep.
really is up. And finally, it's
Yep.
all about buying and holding in the really long term. That's when you generate real wealth, not from finding passive income or free checks in the mail.
Yeah. And there's in California with the SB9 laws, there's a lot of opportunity to do additional units. So we did like can do an ADU in Nevada, like you can kind of like do a rec room or an additional living space in a garage. And so there's ways that you can get additional income by even just owning the property and just putting in, obviously a little more capital. But there's a lot of really cool innovative resources with modular things coming out for landlords that want to put, a different little pods or ADUs or even junior ADUs and attach them to the house. So you can also do lot splits. So there's lots happening if you research it, and there's a big movement. I think the White House, it'll be interesting to see with the election how that comes about, but I think you'll see a lot of housing laws and support coming out over the next 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, seems like housing is a national agenda right now, and they're using
Yeah.
California and even Minnesota's zoning reform as a playbook on.
Yeah, and it's keeping, I mean, in terms of inflation, it's the biggest part of inflation right now, right? Is housing costs, and what people spend is one of the biggest spends out of their pocketbook. And I think it's like 51% of Americans spend more than 50% of what they make on rent or a mortgage, which is just like, I mean, the lending requirement on that is typically 35%, but that's pretty crazy when you think about that.
Yeah. Now, if you think about knowing everything you know in real estate, you've been on the development side, you've been a landlord, you're
Hmm.
helping tenants right now, and you've seen a lot of different types of real estate too around the housing space. If a family office called you and said, Heather, we want to invest $100 million, how will you
Hmm.
invest that portfolio? Assuming you had to invest it solely in the real estate thesis, and that 100 million was a part
Yeah.
of the portfolio that was already diversified.
Yeah, so I think a big part of that comes around doing small multifamily, to the point, and in California has on the docket one where you could do like 10 units, like just through the building department. You don't even need to go through the planning department. And is specifically in California, one of the biggest things is we have site construction requirements, which makes you have to do upgrades around where you develop. It might be water, electrical, road, the planning commission usually figures that out, or part of a general plan. But with this new law, that it's just that changes everything, and it lowers the cost of development. So I think that's part of it, is really looking at creative ways there. And there's also a play politically where we need to open the funnel for housing production, and we need to find creative ways to make it more feasible for people that want to develop. And that really starts at a local level. So I think, it's not only the financial component of it, but it's also getting into your local government and understanding how things operate, and, utilizing those funds to be able to politicize ways to open the funnel for housing development. And I think the other thing outside of that is probably, looking at modular and ways that you can do that. I would definitely invest in that portion of development too.
It seems like your summary is you would invest that money in new development. You
Yeah.
invest a portion of it in, it seems like you would invest most of it in California, which is your core bet, and then a portion
Yeah.
of it in multifamily up to 10 units, where you mentioned that, if you, most new construction need two types of permits, one from the building department and one from the plan.
Hmm.
But up to 10 units, there are exemptions where you only need to go through the building department,
Yeah.
not the planning.
Yeah.
Then seems like you
Yeah.
go ahead, please. Do you want
I
to?
was I was gonna add to that. I think senior housing. I mean, I don't know if you guys have heard about like the white wave, or the the white wave of people when they retire. we don't have enough places for them to be. And I think you'll hit a wall where there's going to be a huge rush to be able to support people in different ways. And so real estate often follows like the population and what they're doing and how they're doing it. And so if you look at population trends and you can forecast kind of what's happening in different ways. And so really paying attention to those economics and what's happening in that population is really important to understanding kind of how you can navigate your real estate portfolio. So if I had 100 million, I would definitely be investing in different types of opportunities with seniors and different type of communities around that. And I think that is something that we will see probably come to a head in the next 5 years.
And seems like you might be on your way to that 100 million soon.
Yeah.
So
Yes. Yes. Let's put those good vibes out there, set the intention, right?
yeah, right. So talking about aspirations and goals, what's your main aspiration for 2024?
So we're launching next month. So that's the biggest goal. And I think for us, really, fall can kind of be slow in the rental market. So, which is a really great opportunity for launch. We want to have slow growth there because I want to talk to every customer. I want to know how it's performed, how our product works for you, how it doesn't work for you, where our opportunity is to change that. And, we really want like a couple hundred people to just love it and, want to tell all their friends about it. And so that's really our goal for 2024 is to do that. And then we're actually planning to go out to market and do a formal pre-seed fundraise. So we hope to be able to raise money and to be able to kind of accelerate what we do in 2025.
Love it, Heather. Would love to ask you some rapid fire questions.
Yeah.
The first is, what organization or institution would you fix if you had the time?
Oh gosh, can we talk about the government? I would definitely think looking at housing in the government, what people don't, housing is so essential to how we live. And it's one of the biggest contributors, whether it be buildings, commercial or housing, to CO2 emissions. And the cost of housing is actually driving people to live further from where they work. Yes, we have remote work. It's helping a little bit, but there's still a lot of people who have to work in person, and typically the people who are at the lower wage jobs. And so not only do they have to spend more money to drive, their insurance is higher, they have to move further away, their quality of life is less, they spend less with time with their kids and their family, which actually really affects our whole economy. And local communities where they work, they lose the economic spend of them in their community. And we lose diversity and we're losing a lot of the middle class. And so I think a lot of that actually has to do with government and regulation. And there's times for regulation and there's times for no regulation. And I think it's really following the data there and putting forward really good policies to support having diversity in our income classes and improving how our housing situation is in the US.
Completely agreed. And it seems like housing is now a national issue. So
Yeah, yeah, it's been a national issue for a long time, but I think it's really, at a tipping point. And also when you pair it environmentally, there's a lot of stuff that comes from how we house people, and changing that can actually, in Tahoe, 58% of the people commute in, and if you flip that metric, you could save like 4 billion tons of CO2 if they all live locally
wow.
yearly. Like that's a lot. That's just this area. You can imagine in each metro area how much that is. And a large part of that is because they have to live further away because they can't afford to live locally or they can't get access to it, right? And if we change that by opening the funnel, imagine the impact we could have.
Imagine the impact indeed. What is the biggest mistake you see others making in your industry?
I would say, I think some people, I think in terms of entrepreneurship, talking about startup, one of the things we've always like talked about is long term, right? And not just like 18 months, 24 months. Like what does it look like in 7 to 10 years? What do we need to get there? What's our goal? And actually modeling that out. So there's a model in terms of financially how you want to do that, user growth wise. What have other companies done? How are you different? But also internally, like, what do you want your culture to be? Like, and how do you maintain that culture when you go from two co-founders to 10 to 200 to 2000 to 200,000 to 2 million, whatever your employee numbers are. I think that's probably beyond what the actual product is and how we serve customers. for us, I think the core thing that we really want to focus on is how we serve our employees and how we build a really great company culture to do that. And I think some companies lose sight of that. And I think that's really, really important to Ashley and I. And we want to maintain that whether we have two employees, whether we have 200,000. And I don't think a lot of employers are. There's some great ones out there. There are, but I think there's some startups, especially, I think should always keep that close to themselves and close to the heart of their company, because your employees are the heart of your company. You don't have a company unless if you don't have like employees working for you, right? And so I think a lot of other companies could probably serve to be focusing on that, and that's something we plan to do in the future and now.
Then if your loved ones agree to be mentored by you, and it's not true for everyone, but yeah, if your loved ones agree to be mentored by you, what's the most important skill you want to teach them?
One of the best classes I took at Berkeley was negotiation. And I think people hear that word and they always think of like, oh, lawyers and like you're going to battle to the end and I'm going to win. And there was a really great book by Stuart Diamond called Getting More, which I'm currently reading. And you would think it's just teaching you how to negotiate. But what's interesting is like when you think about it, we negotiate all the time in life through small things and big things. And the core of really good negotiation is understanding what the other person values and understanding what's really important to them and what they want to get. And then how do you find ways like in small steps on how to get there, but with a mutual beneficial like solution. And so how do you essentially, what we talk in negotiation is like increase the pie. So if you're just starting here, like how do you slowly go like that? So you might end up with a little bit of less, but you're not going to end up with nothing. And really trying to understand people, I think, is the key part of it, and understand their values and what's important to them. And I guess I never really thought about negotiation that way before I took the class and I've been reading the book. And so if I were to mentor somebody, I'd say, definitely let's talk about negotiation and let's do like a master class on it. Let's get all the great people in the room and learn about it, because it's really understanding how to have compassion and understanding for people is at the core of really good negotiators, and operating with grace and calmness too.
Completely agree. Negotiation as a means to achieve a partnership, not just to
Yeah.
carve a bigger slice of your pie.
Yep. Exactly.
So that was Heather Rankow, founder, mother of two, wife, previously competitive freestyle skier. Our co-founder is also a competitive athlete. Recently juggled, launching a company while working, graduating from a master's program, and somebody who is a golden retriever, completely obsessed about customers, deeply empathetic about everyone she meets, and wanting to make a real difference in housing affordability crisis. If you want to reach out to her, we'll add links to how you can reach out to her in the chat. If you want to talk about real estate anytime, shoot me a note on nick@home.llc. Thanks everyone.